And we have takes. Welcome to Football Takes.
Football! Football, yeah! Football! Football! Yes,
Alrighty.
Football.
The calm before the combine.
Great. I love this time of year.
It is full reckless speculation season. Teams are already jockeying, maneuvering. The Chiefs did something interesting today that we can talk about, and I think there's tentacles off that. Mm-hmm. And the combine next week is where all of the NFL's luminaries, executives, agents, coaches, etc., gather, chatter, tamper a little bit, even though that's not technically allowed.
Agents and teams will be tampering like nuts starting next Monday.
Our guy Thor will be out there with a stopwatch, and he'll be at the combine. So, by the way, tomorrow, a teaser here for Football Takes. And if you're new, thank you for getting us to 3,000 subscribers on this new YouTube channel. Click that like button, the subscribe button. This is the home for all of our outside of the Vikings football takes here on Score North, and for Thor's draft content. Starting tomorrow, it's his first positional ranking episode. He's going to rank his top quarterbacks for the 2026 draft, and we'll have all sorts of other fun draft content. But this is going to be the home for Thor's draft content on the Football Takes podcast, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and Thor Talks Purple for Vikings-centric draft discussions on a near daily basis.
Football.
I know that ESPN just published landing spots and best fits for 50 NFL free agents, so why don't you start us wherever you want in that bin here, Judd?
The last 24 to 48 hours has been an absolute boon of free agency information. The Athletic has published their top 150 free agents and projected contracts for every one of them.
That's crazy.
So in looking through this,
PFF did their like top 100 with contracts too.
So in going through these things, like it's just manna from football heaven, here is my first take for you. Let's stop. And this pertains, I will say this is going to pertain to Vikings fans mostly. But I've seen some suggestions here, and I've seen some discussion. Let's stop with any thought that Breece Hall of the Jets might be a Viking. And here's why. Breece Hall is the number 2 ranked, and this speaks to the free agency class, which, by the way, is not great. He is the number 2 ranked free agent on the Athletics' entire list, projected to get a 4-year, $54 million contract. Now, he's a running back, and he's really good. I'm not trying to put him down, and he is a guy who needs to leave that cesspool of a franchise with the Jets and go to a team that actually is run like it's a National Football League team. All of that being said, the Vikings can clear cap space. No question about it. Lots of teams can. But 4 years, $54 million, a free agent market that's down. So the upper echelon guys, no matter what you think of them, are going to get paid. I think we can safely say that Breece Hall is going to break the bank with a team. And I do not know that at the end of the day, because this is what happens at times, especially it feels like with running backs, Phil, I don't know that he's going to end up having been worth the investment that will be made in him by another team.
There are some really interesting Breece Hall landing spots that would take teams to new levels, I feel like. Yahoo just published something last week too, but imagine, for example, if the Chicago Bears got Breece Hall. Because they've got a couple of decent running backs. They got Monangai in the 7th round, and DeAndre Swift has been a good, solid running back.
Yep.
But I think Breece Hall, especially in a system and an offense that is like the Jets by a mile, have the most games without scoring a touchdown in like the last 10 years in the NFL. They literally go games without scoring touchdowns, and they're falling behind all the time. They abandon their run game. What if you could get Breece Hall on a team that was emphasizing the run game throughout all 3 hours and playing with leads once in a while and using the threat to open up your passing game and having it be complementary? Like, what if the Chicago Bears landed Breece Hall and Ben Johnson had his version of like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a actual top 5 or 6 running back in the NFL? Mm-hmm. What if the Chiefs finally got serious about running back, and they could also draft Jeremiah Love if he falls that far to them? Another name that's been bandied about from a couple different publications, and it may not make a ton of sense on the surface because they drafted Omari and Hampton who got hurt, but what if the Chargers said, let's double down. We got Amari and Hampton. Let's get Breece Hall, and let's just have a ridiculous two-headed monster with Justin Herbert, Mike McDaniel. Yeah. I mean, the Dolphins with various combinations around Devon Achane. I think Mostert had a big season a couple years ago. So I'd love to see Breece Hall in an actual offensive machine and see what that guy can do for a full year.
I would too. I guess what I would caution against, though, is the contract itself. Like, what are the... Breece Hall is a guy that I think could step in and have an impact, and a very positive one. But here's my 2026 take on the running back position, okay? Because, like, it's evolved and ebbed and flowed, and 3 years or 5 years back, you didn't pay him. They were basically, it was a dead position, and now it's definitely not. But what I would say is, if you look at the evolution of how the position has changed and sort of come back into vogue, there's one thing I think is very important. Look at the amount of running backs that are still sort of just found and then are successful. Mm-hmm. Like that's one spot that I'm not going to write an enormous check for. I definitely want a good one. I definitely want to, unlike some teams, run the football. And they can be incredibly valuable if they can catch passes in the screen game. All of that yes. But the Breece Hall thing, like, he's going to get paid a boatload. And I just don't know when I see the amount of guys that pop up and they were, okay college players, good college players, but they are still not really pressing your salary cap at all. I think that's the sweet spot. So I'll be very curious at the end of the day to see what Breece Hall gets. But I agree with you. I think his impact definitely for a year or two could be really good.
And I think, like, on the financial front, and Kenneth Walker is another guy. We talked about him on O-line committee today, where he's probably going to make $10+ million a year on his next deal.
Yeah.
Super Bowl MVP. The price of really good running backs is still so low compared to other positions. I mean, I get that Saquon Barkley leveraged that 2,000-yard season into a $20 million AAV, which is the biggest running back AAV.
Yep.
McCaffrey, after everything he's done, is at $19 million. But like, Breece Hall is being projected, to your note, at, is it 4 years, 54? So
4 years,
okay.
54.
So what's the math on that? It's like 17, 16, 15, $14 million a year, somewhere in there, whatever.
Wow.
Is that it? 14 million, 14, 28, 56. Yeah, it's about $13.5 million a year, 14 million.
The calculator out, yeah.
Dude, like, a cornerback costs $20+ million in free agency. If you want a guard, it's going to Will Fries cost the Vikings $17 million a year in free agency last year.
Well, and you'd like that money back.
So we could debate that. But if you're a team that has cap space and it's going to cost you, let's say, $10 to $15 million a year for a Kenneth Walker or a Breece Hall, I think you pay it. Another team that might be interesting, depending on, too, kind of what they do at quarterback, but Mike McCarthy is going to come in and bring some competent offensive ideas to the Pittsburgh Steelers for the first time in a long time. Mm-hmm. And the Steelers last year, between Kenneth Gainwell, who's been kind of this, he's more of like a secondary back, and Jalen Warren, who I believe was undrafted a handful of years ago. He's kind of a small, like, 5'8" bowling ball type. Like, what if you kind of wiped all that out and said, hey, Steelers, just go, they got a bunch of cap room. You're going to have Breece Hall as your horse featured running back, and you're going to bring running the football back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So there's some really interesting teams that I think, whether it's Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall, that it is worth paying like $12 to $15 million for, because you have the cap space and he might be a piece that can get your offense to another level. That's my Breece Hall take.
Yeah.
Chicago Bears would be dangerous, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think that if you're in the Vikings case, and by the way, I would like to see them add another good running back. That's the type of pool I'm probably not going to dip into.
Couple more names on the free agency front, because all these lists you write are just flowing out here. Malik Willis, projected now officially by PFF, which has been pretty spot on with their contract predictions, at 2 years, $40 million with $30 million guaranteed. So it's effectively a 2-year contract, but like kind of a 1-year flyer type deal.
Yep.
And ESPN, which ranks him as a top 20 overall free agent, has him going to the Miami Dolphins, who just hired. I had that match also on our matchmaker episode last week, but I'll broaden the question out for you. If the price is 2 years, $40 million for Malik Willis, how many teams off the top of your head should be interested in bringing him in?
Oh, considering the amount of teams that are always pursuing QBs, I think it'll be a few. And so the athletic projection on him is also 2 years, $46 million. And these are usually, I find them because once the bidding starts, especially for a quarterback, you can get stupid. So that's probably a little bit low, probably around the ballpark. But I think Malik Willis is going to get paid. In fact, on the athletic list, he's the 9th ranked free agent. So he is very high among quarterbacks because QBs often don't hit the market. And I think he'll have a handful of teams at least pursue him, right?
Yeah.
The Steelers could, the Jets could, the Dolphins could, and to your point, probably should.
Yeah.
And that's just 3 off the top of my head. Now, here's my question, though. How much do you trust it completely? Like, he did a really good job of coming in, did a really nice job when Jordan Love was out. But we've seen that movie before, and it's never the complete film. It's a part of a movie that's enticing. But I've also seen films where I think the first half is cinematic genius and the second half absolutely stinks.
I think in a year where there's only one like actual high level quarterback draft prospect that is bona fide, Fernando's going to go probably number 1 overall. And then Ty Simpson's the second guy, and he's kind of being floated maybe mid to late first round. Yeah. I guess there's a chance he could fall depending on the next few months. But in a year like this, where it's kind of a quarterback gap year in the draft, and there are some teams, the fact that there's a guy like Malik Willis, he fell to the 3rd round, but he was being bandied about in the pre-draft process a few years ago as like a first-round pick, maybe even top half of the first-round pick. The fact that you can now just take a little $20 million flyer on a guy like him, and you're the Steelers, like you said, you're the Dolphins who have to figure out some cap stuff because they're going to have to eat a lot of that Tua money.
How about
$60 million.
How about this one? Mike LaFleur in Arizona.
It's a great one.
I mean,
boot Kyler Murray. Get Malik
Kyler's
Willis.
Yep. Now, I just don't know. Like, I've gotten lured in many of times. I've gotten lured in by backups who play well, and then it's like, now the job is yours, and it's like, ooh, that's not what I saw. So. But yeah, if you can get him on a reasonable contract that you can essentially get out of after a year, maybe 2, that's pretty enticing.
Yeah. The number 1 free agent on 3 different lists that I'm looking at is Trey Hendrickson, the veteran edge rusher from Cincinnati that had that hold-in situation last year. And we already gave all of our money to receivers. Sorry, Trey. Our defense is going to give up 40 points a game, but have fun out there. And he got injured, but over the last 3 years, he's been a bona fide top 6 or 7 edge rusher in the NFL. 31 years old, projected at 1 year, $21 million. I think ESPN has him going to the Colts as kind of a final piece to that puzzle. But there's going to be a team out there, whether it's the Colts or the 49ers need some edge rusher help. The Patriots could really use some pass rushing help. Trey Hendrickson is probably going to be like a team looking for the final piece to their quarterback pass rushing puzzle to be a Super Bowl champion.
Jared Allen, you say?
Sure.
Same type of thing.
Yep. So there's going to be some teams that want him to be that for them, and that'll be another interesting one to watch.
So he had, if it was indeed legit, and I think it was, he had back problems, correct, last season?
Yeah, and he only played like 200 snaps, I want to say.
Back problems, as I've long said, scare me a lot. So I got a question off of that, though. Okay, let's say he leaves, because he probably does leave. How are the Bengals exactly going to improve this defense that they've talked about improving? I mean, it has been awful.
I mean,
Two
they do have,
coordinators.
yeah. Well, they do have now the seventh most cap space.
Okay.
So they could bring. They have $53 million in cap space.
Okay.
Which, yeah, it's seventh or eighth on the list here. So they would have enough money to just re-sign Hendrickson, because they also need a Hendrickson, right? Like, if imagine, like, to your point, what if they lose that guy, and he's out for the entire season for them playing for a different team? But yeah, if you're the Bengals and you're saying, boy, if Joe Burrow stays healthy, what else do we need to maybe win that division that seems gettable after all the other coaches got fired and the quarterback situations are up in the air in half the teams?
Yep.
We could use an edge rusher like Trey Hendrickson to put this defense back into a place where they can maybe not give up 40 points. So, but I don't think they would franchise him because it would get sticky and expensive. Right. But that window is now open to franchise tag players.
If the Bengals do not significantly improve their defense, and I mean significantly, in 2026, and they go through the same exact type of thing, but let's say the difference is Burrow stays healthy, Burrow becomes a dummy if he stays put. Like, at that point in time, you do not care then. That just means you want your money.
Yeah, and it's other quarterbacks of his stature have kind of grinded through bad seasons. It's very rare that quarterbacks of that caliber leave in their prime. Usually it takes them until they're like 35 to Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford.
When Detroit traded him? 34?
34, somewhere in there.
Because, I mean, I think at some point in time, and I know that they went to a Super Bowl in, I think, his second season, so the Bengals have been there. But I think at some point in time, Phil, that Burrow becomes Stafford. And
Absolutely,
probably a better and probably more talented. But, get out, dude.
Get out.
Get out. But, I mean, seriously, Stafford, and I don't know if he demanded out. I don't think that he did from Detroit. But at some point in time, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I'm with you, man. Like, especially if football makes you that depressed. Is it football that makes you that depressed, or is it the losing in the Cincinnati of it that is making you that depressed? And if it is, like, go chase your happiness, Joe.
You practice underneath a freeway.
It doesn't have to be like this, Joe.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I'm not even saying the Vikings, but drive around.
I am specifically, to be clear, saying the Vikings.
You've got a freaking state-of-the-art, essentially college campus facility here. Yeah. And you're practicing, I think you still are, below an interstate and or in the stadium.
Hey,
think about that.
But they put chili on noodles, so everything's great.
So, you know what? Cincinnati's fine. I got no problem with the city. But the Bengals are a bottom-feeding, hopeless piece of crap for the most part.
Football. No. I have more of a question for you than a take here. So the news came out this morning that the Kansas City Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract, and this is prime restructure season. It doesn't mean that money goes away. It means money gets shifted from an accounting purpose. But his cap number on that 10-year deal that he signed, and this is part of the benefit of signing these longer term deals, you can kind of push money into different corridors of the contract. So his salary cap number for this year was $78.2 million on a $300 million projected cap, which was one of the 2 or 3 biggest cap hits in the league.
Sure.
And so they lowered it to $34.5 million, creating $43.5 million in additional salary cap space, according to Over the Cap. So they're almost cap compliant. The Chiefs were way over the salary cap. And the way that works mechanically is they took his gigantic base salary of 40-some million dollars or whatever it was, and they converted to a signing bonus. So he gets a bunch of money in signing bonus form, and they can then prorate the accounting for that $40 million over the duration of the contract. Mm-hmm. So he gets his money either way, but they then get to take a chunk of that accounting and smooth it over the rest of the contract. So they're incurring higher cap hits in future seasons to create some leeway for this season as they try to get back into the mix as a Super Bowl team. But here's my question about Patrick Mahomes for you. So this is going to be his age 31 season. Time flies because he's no longer a young quarterback. No. I'm not saying he's close to retirement, but he's 31 years old. The last 3 seasons, which is a pretty large sample. Like, this is his prime, man. This is ages 28, 29, 30 for Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
And here are his ranks among qualified starting quarterbacks the last 3 seasons collectively. Passer rating, 21st. Completion percentage, 20th. Yards per attempt, 24th. Touchdown percentage, so percentage of attempts that are touchdowns, 22nd. Analytically, it's a little bit better. Expected points added, 11th. But where do you put him after these last 3 years? These last 3 years, productivity-wise, are very pedestrian for him. I mean, he had an 89 passer rating last year after putting up crazy historical record offensive numbers for the first part of his career. I guess, how do you take these last 3 years of down production into consideration when you're ranking Patrick Mahomes among all-time great quarterbacks? Has his stock fallen for you in the last 2 or 3 years?
Probably, but peak greatness was so high that it's hard to like I can't and won't erase that. And I think when I think of the greats, longevity is fine, but it's also like at your peak, how dominant were you? And he was still at his peak, absolutely incredible. So I need to see, to answer the question fully, I'm going to need to see the entire body of work, because he is at an age for a quarterback where you could certainly come back and have, 3 or 4 great years. That being said, as far as like the recency bias of the past 3 years, it's definitely probably fallen. But in my mind, what wins out is at your most dominant, and it can't be like a season. I'm talking about you strung together several seasons. At your most dominant, how high did you rank above the rest of the quarterback class in the league at that time? And I think right now, in answering that question for me, that part still wins out. But yes, he definitely has come back to the pack. And quite frankly, too, man, with the way he plays, like when you watch him now in games, how often is he hobbled? How often, like some of the stuff that he did previously is just hard to continue to do.
Yeah.
But I definitely have an appreciation for his greatest greatness is and was off the charts.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he doesn't have to give back the Super Bowl rings. He doesn't have to give back the 50 touchdowns he threw in his first year as a starter. But 3 years ago, pretty much everybody universally crowned him as the greatest quarterback of all time. And then the second question off that was, so it's like, okay, he's literally the greatest quarterback anyone's ever seen play football.
Sure.
The arm angle stuff, some of the mobility, the numbers,
Collinsworth.
everything. Yeah, here's a guy. But the second part of the question was, longevity still matters, and Tom Brady did it until he was like 45 years old and won a bunch more rings. And so,
Yes.
so he's already there on a peak greatness front. Can he then catch Tom Brady in some of the other areas? Well, there was never a stretch in Tom Brady's prime where he was measurably a below average quarterback for 2 or 3 consecutive years. There was a couple of years where maybe his stats were down a little bit for a minute or something, but last season, and I get it, like he doesn't have the weapons that some other guys have, and they're going through kind of the same transition the Patriots did, where you set the first part of your dynasty, and then age and contracts and the league kind of catch up to you, and then your quarterback tears his knee, which also happened with Brady and the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And then there's an act 2 in the quarterback's 30s, and we'll see what happens now with the Chiefs. But
sure,
just for this last season, and this is again the third of a 3-year string of subpar play for Patrick Mahomes, he literally ranked behind Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart, and Jacoby Brissett in passer rating.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would take those guys at all over Patrick Mahomes. If it was one game or one playoff run, he's probably still the guy that I'm taking. But it is getting a little harder to reconcile the gap in his perception and legacy and some of the productivity that we've seen here the last 3 years, if you're trying to make the case that he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, he still has a lot of work to do and a lot of resume building, and it's going in the wrong direction. That's all I'm saying.
I think if you were to quantify that and say, because he is probably the most dynamic quarterback at his best of all time. Like the stuff he did is phenomenal. But I think if you were to say, okay, you need to pick the greatest quarterback of all time based on everything, based on dynamic play, based on longevity, based on Super Bowls, it's Brady. Because nobody, and by the way, Brady did not, despite the fact that I think there are athletes that would like to think that they are like him, Brady did not like set the new bar for, oh, I'm going to play till I'm 45.
Yeah.
Tom Brady defied logic. I don't know how, but he did. It defied logic. It defied convention. And we have seen quarterbacks try to play past the age or into their 40s. Brett Favre was a freaking train wreck. 2010 was awful. Aaron Rodgers has tried. He can still complete passes, but you know what? He's not the same guy. He's not even close. So if you flat out said you have to pick the greatest quarterback of all time, it's Brady. Super Bowl rings. The dude went to Tampa Bay and won at what? The age of 44, 45?
Mm-hmm.
So like if that's what you're saying, like you've got to weigh all of these things. I think Mahomes is the most fun, perhaps, that I've had watching a quarterback play.
Yeah.
But Tom Brady is the greatest of all time.
Yes. And I'll add to that. I think my question is less about Mahomes Brady at this point, because that, based on the last 3 years of Mahomes' statistical play, and that does matter in part in your legacy, is like, are you putting up crazy numbers all the time?
Yeah.
It is part of it. Now he did win a championship where every game was a close game, and they went 15-1, and that was the year they got beat in the Super Bowl. But 2 years before that, they wound up winning a Super Bowl, and he wasn't necessarily playing at his peak capability. And so championships matter too. I think my main question is less about Mahomes versus Brady, and it's more about, well, what about Mahomes versus some of the other guys that we just like threw off to the side 3 years ago? Final debate, it's over. He's passed all of these other dudes: Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, et cetera, John Elway. I just feel like that debate is back open. And here's another part of it. Because Brady played into his 40s and Rodgers has found a way to play into his 40s, we assume incorrectly that, there's just a new bar for every top quarterback is now going to be awesome until they're 42 or 43, or even like passable at 42 or 43. Yeah. But there's a lot of other examples in quarterback history where once they get to like 34, 35, they're actually kind of cooked. Mm-hmm. So have we ruled out the possibility that he only has like 2 or 3? Dude, Russell Wilson was cooked at like 35.
Well, and Mahomes, to go back to what I said, I think he's taking a beating. Like his style of play encourages hits.
Yeah.
As I recall, Tom was pretty smart about it. As I recall, Montana, right? So like part of this discussion depends on your style. And what Brady did to me is off the charts. But yeah, I don't know that it's intriguing that you bring up the debate ends where Mahomes has passed this list, because I don't know if I feel that. I mean, you go back and look at what Montana did. You look at what Elway couldn't win a Super Bowl to save his life, but then he went out with 2 consecutive, and you look at the longevity there. So yeah, there's definitely, and plus the other part of this discussion that gets really nuanced to me is you got to consider the eras as well. Then, like in Elway's day, I could grab a wide receiver and throw him down, and I might not get a flag for it. Mm-hmm. So like, there's just so many things here. But yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes, given what he has done, definitely is high on the list. Could he be cooked in 2 or 3 years? Absolutely could.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would bet on him having a resurgence and stacking his and the Chiefs' resume in kind of an act 2 after they had this playoff miss this year. If I had to pick one or the other, I would bet that. But that's another factor. Andy Reid's in his mid-60s.
I don't think it's going to be. I think Reid's close to being done.
So that's another question for the next 10 years of Patrick Mahomes, too. So
could it be Kevin O'Connell?
Ooh, that'd be interesting. KOC could finally have the one quarterback that can operate his system at a high level. Maybe 2. Matthew Stafford.
For sure.
Kirk Cousins for fourth quarter comebacks. But Yeah, I'm just posing some questions about.
Oh, I know.
I feel like there's some questions open here about Patrick Mahomes.
I feel like if there is a Mahomes Act 2, it's with a different coach. I don't think it's with a different team, but I definitely think it's going to be with a different coach.
Because didn't Joe Montana get one with George Seifert?
I think
Seifert also won one with Steve Young too.
Yeah, I think the Bengals in '89, was that not Seifert?
I think it was Seifert, and then '94 was Seifert.
Yeah, with
when
Steve
they beat
Young.
the Chargers. Yeah, with Steve
And
Young.
then Joe Montana went and had a final act with the Chiefs.
Pretty well. They went to a conference championship game.
Yeah.
One of those years, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Maybe got beat by the Bills, if my memory serves me. But anyways, I think we'll save this for a future episode, but you had brought up Nick Sirianni and Hot Seat on a different podcast, and we'll probably have to do this next week, but I have a take on Nick Sirianni and also the Eagles in general that I'd love to kick around with you. But that's all the time we have on this episode of Football Takes, where we love to sling our football takes. Thor tomorrow in this exact space will be ranking his quarterback draft options for the first time as he lays out his Thor board.
I'll be curious
He gave
to
us
see that
access to the
board.
spreadsheet. It's pretty crazy.
I'll be curious to see the board, considering that this is not a great draft for quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's and he's got comps laid out too, which are fascinating. And then the combine will give us even more information next week. But
Love it.
You're home for Football Takes, Thor's Draft Takes here for the Sports Dad Judd. I'm Phil. Click that subscribe button on the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple and Spotify as we continue to grow this brand new podcast. Thank you, guys.